this space is Ira, who is an early person who is with Coinapult. He's the CEO of Coinapult, and you heard from Eric yesterday, who's the co-founder of Coinapult, where they are, I don't know if I'd say quietly, but maybe more quietly than their achievement, somewhat quietly, really doing amazing things. And that you see that a lot with some companies where you have the opposite, where people are all talk, no action. But you do have some very good companies in this space who kind of, just quietly, what are you up to down there in Panama? We're just changing the world, the way things work. And so Coinapult's very exciting, and I'm thrilled to have Ira here. And I really look forward to hearing what he has to say. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So thanks, Ira.
Thanks for the great introduction, Bruce. We had a couple technical difficulties. So instead of a presentation, we have a message from Satoshi. Today I'm going to talk about the purpose of Bitcoin. Why does it exist? Why do we use it? What are the goals of Bitcoin, if anything? Does it just exist for its own sake? First, though, before we get into these deeper questions, it's important to really understand what Bitcoin is. I'm not going to go into a short summary description. I think a lot of other speakers have done a good job with the basics. But I want to talk about some of the characteristics to really get an idea of the capabilities of the system. First, Bitcoin is open source. So for those of you who aren't technical, open source just means nobody owns it. Anybody can modify it, anybody can read it. Very specifically, if you have a fundamental disagreement with Bitcoin, Bitcoin can actually help you implement what you think would be better. So one prime example of this is Litecoin. The Litecoin guys, Litecoin is the first altcoin, they thought that Bitcoin was a little too slow, it was a little too cumbersome for merchant transactions and things like that. So they made a fork and made a few small changes to policy, to kind of the regulation of the protocol, and released a new coin. I think it maybe took, I don't know, less than a day worth of coding to make the changes that they desired. If you want something far more different, if your ideas are very different, it might take you longer. But whatever you think the ideal payment system, the ideal money or asset is or would look like, this technology could help you implement it and help us reach that as a society. Bitcoin is designed for privacy. This is different from anonymity. Bitcoin can facilitate anonymity from very, very skilled people. The prime use case of that is Satoshi. To this day, we still don't know who he is. But Bitcoin is designed for privacy, which is to say, to use Bitcoin, you don't have to give up any personal information. Bitcoin doesn't care about your name, where you live, when you were born, any of these things. It functions the same for everybody. Along those lines, it's objective. It doesn't differentiate, because it doesn't know any of these things about you. It can't discriminate. It can't say, well, you're a woman, or you're too young to use this, or whatever. Everybody is equal in Bitcoin's eyes. Next, this is a pretty contentious issue, is how do you define Bitcoin, the asset that is. It's my opinion that Bitcoin is information. It's often talked about, there are a lot of words people throw around, digital currency, digital commodity. I think in particular the word currency is a hot topic. It scares a lot of people when you say that word, particularly people in kind of the banking or regulatory space, because it has a very, very specific legal meaning. Currency typically means legal tender in most countries, or the legal tender of another country. So legally today, Bitcoin is not currency. It behaves sort of like a commodity, but at its core, it really is information. And I think that people lose track of that a lot in the daily activity of using Bitcoin. And in particular, it's very tempting to think, oh, it's a commodity, or oh, it's a currency, so we can treat it like that. But at the end of the day, information flows freely, and it's very, very fundamentally different to talk about restricting information versus restricting the flow of some physical good or something of that nature. Bitcoin is also trustless. So one example of this is the irreversibility of transactions, not having to know the other party. Because you don't have any information about them, the network doesn't have any information about them, you don't have any ability to assess their trustworthiness. But also because of that, the system has been designed so that you don't need any of that. It'll function just as well without it. Finally, Bitcoin is regulated by math. A lot of people say that Bitcoin is unregulated. This is simply not true. The policy decisions, the protections that regulators are tasked with, Bitcoin has addressed almost every single one of these. And it has done it in a mathematical way. It's impossible to disobey the regulations of Bitcoin. This is very important because a lot of times regulators are tempted to try to fit what they would like Bitcoin to do and how they would like Bitcoin to behave. And frankly, it's just not possible. You can't, no one could do it. The system's out there. People are going to use it no matter what. They're going to use it with the rules that are already in place because there's no other way to use it. And I would say to the regulators or people that might want to have a different system, that might want a system with less privacy or more inflation or whatever policy choice you want, just fork it. That's what Ecuador did most recently. They outlawed Bitcoin entirely, and then they said, well, but we really like the technology, we really like the idea, so we're going to make Ecuador a coin. It's going to be backed by the dollar. They have given it semi-legal tender status, so they're not allowing any competition to it and that sort of thing. And that's a very kind of reasonable reaction. I don't think that the ban in particular will work well. Their Ecuador coin might be accepted and might be very, very useful. It will certainly be much cheaper than the current alternatives that are available in Ecuador. But I do think that the banning Bitcoin is probably not very effective for them. So now we've got kind of an overview of the things that Bitcoin is, the things that Bitcoin isn't. I think we can start to assess what the purpose is behind it. On the screen here, we have Financial Times from January 2009, I think. Satoshi, the creator of Bitcoin, embedded this in what they call the Genesis block, which was the very first block created that started the blockchain. So in particular, what we're supposed to look at here is the chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks. And I think this gives us insight into Satoshi's idea of the purpose of Bitcoin. I think Satoshi saw a systemic problem. Bank bailouts are an indicator not only of the banking sector, that they were in trouble, that they had made very bad decisions with people's money, lost a lot of people's money, but also that they and their friends in the government treated the people unfairly, basically taking taxpayer money, giving it to the banks, giving it to the bankers, as they do day after day through the Fed and through any number of different policies. So I think we can take from this that Satoshi is very critical of the banking system as it exists today. I don't think that's particularly contentious, but there are some other things I think we can take from Satoshi. He doesn't have a lot of public record about his political leanings and things like that, but I think clearly he believes in privacy. The proof of this is that we still don't know who he is. I think that to him and to me, privacy is really a fundamental right and is necessary in commerce. there are many things in commerce that are perfectly natural that would happen within a company or within a person's finances that you have every right to protect. Purchases that you make or as a company, purchases are information that can be used against you from your competitors or things like that. So only in the last 40 years has this concept of privacy really been attacked. Before that, it was just the default assumption. Of course, in financial transactions, you have privacy. If I hand a gold coin to Eric, who knows about it? Eric and I and whoever's watching, you know? Since about 1970, though, two kind of major trends have started to eat into this. The first is the information age. So it's cheaper and easier to store information day after day, and so everybody wants to. Seeing this, regulators and government officials have said, well, we can store all this information, so you have to. And every year, they make new rules saying you have to store more and more, you have to gather more. And really, I think in particularly in the US, the kind of end goal is know everything about every person as they're going about their day. They claim they don't want to do anything with it, but I don't think that's the point. Target didn't want to use people's credit card numbers that they were storing, but they got out anyway. And I think that that's really the danger of storing all this information. But OK, so Satoshi believed that the banking system was broken, in particular that it was corrupt. He believed in privacy. I think that he also believed in access. Is kind of the third core purpose that I think we can glean from him. He could have built things into Bitcoin that would have been more restrictive, that would have put up barriers to entry, but he didn't. He put the lowest possible barriers to entry in. And this is one thing he did talk about, is getting people into the advanced financial markets and into the global trade markets in general. This question of access is what Coinapult has chosen to address. So all of the tools that we build, all the things that we do, are trying to increase the access to Bitcoin. Unlike a lot of other companies in the space, we've chosen a actual global business model for this. Instead of picking a particular corridor like the Kenyan remittance corridor that BitPesa is linking up, or a number of others, Rebit, hooking up the Philippine remittance corridor, we're building generic tools for access. So we're building kind of infrastructure tools that could be useful in any of these places, and hopefully all around the world. I was going to give you some demos of these, but as you see, technical difficulties. So if anybody wants to see the things I'm talking about, come see me after. The three core tools that we've built for access, though. One, locks. Locks, for those of you who don't know, is a variable Bitcoin balance, which is to say that when you deposit money into a lock, let's say a dollar lock, your Bitcoin balance will vary, and it will stay constant in dollar terms. So you lock $100 worth of Bitcoin, it's always $100 worth of Bitcoin. It's not dollars, it's Bitcoin. And you can only retrieve it as Bitcoin. We won't send you dollars. But the price is stable. We offer locks in dollars, euros, pounds, gold, and silver. So we think that this, getting rid of the Bitcoin volatility, will make it much more usable for everyday people and businesses. Most people, particularly poor people, that the typical unbanked demographic, they can't afford 30% price swings and things like that. And it's often one of the objections you hear from people when they're looking at Bitcoin for the first time. They say, oh, I can't use this. I have no confidence in the value tomorrow. How am I going to accept it if I don't know if I can pay my rent or that sort of thing? So using locks, now they can assure that rent is covered. Anything else that they want to do, they can budget for it. The second tool that we've built to increase access is an SMS wallet. This is very similar to mobile money projects like M-Pesa. Basically, it allows you to use Bitcoin just by sending SMS messages, no internet required. We think that this is a very important step to actually reach the unbanked. Unfortunately, most of the unbanked are also very poor. While smartphone penetration and internet penetration are increasing, it's still the majority of the people don't have access to the internet on a daily basis and don't have smartphones. There's some contention about the exact statistics because typically they're a couple years old, but something like 70% of the phones in the world are still feature phones. And again, mostly these are in the hands of the poor, less financially connected people. So now using our SMS wallet, these people can access this new market and hopefully have new financial opportunities. Finally, very related to our lock service, Coinapult does price discovery for the community. So we reach out to basically anybody who has Bitcoin to sell, miners, payment processors, merchants, people that are buying, as well as all of the major exchanges. And we aggregate all this information into a master order book that we keep, and basically just watch the price religiously. every fraction of a second, we're actively seeking out this information and trying to find what are people thinking around the world, what are they doing. And this is something I'm very passionate about. I have a lot of fun. Particularly, I think that you see trends early by looking at the price. You can see when China's getting excited or when the Russians start buying. So this is a service that we provide to the community, really. We think that this market is growing very, very fast, but it's growing very unevenly, is the best way to put it. And in a lot of places, it's quite a barrier. People don't want to buy a coin if they see that they're getting 10% above what somebody in another country would pay. So we even all that stuff out. In general, I think that this access question is really the key kind of question about Bitcoin today. This last year has been pretty tough for a lot of us in terms of the price action. In some ways, interest is not, certainly hasn't declined, as some people might say, but it hasn't accelerated quite as fast as a lot of people in the space hoped for, around December of last year when the price is 1,200. And personally, I think the main reason for this is access. I think that we got very excited about this technology and started shouting from the rooftops, but we forgot who it was targeted towards. It's very nice to have Bitcoin in the United States, but there are more credit cards than people in the United States. They really don't need it. And what's more, it's only a marginal difference to them. The typical credit card fee is, I think, 2.5–3%. With Bitcoin, they may save 1 or 2% on that, depending on processing fees and so on. It's just not a really good value proposition for a lot of people in the United States. Who it is a good value proposition for is the unbanked. Unfortunately, though, that's not who we've been focusing on as a community, with some very notable exceptions. I think that if we want to see Bitcoin grow and we want to see the price rise again, this is the core question that we have to address. We have to make ways, a pathway for people to get Bitcoin in their hands, to go purchase it again, to keep using it, and build out this access infrastructure. So with that being said, we are Coinapult. Access is our focus. If you are setting up a local business in any market around the world, we can help you. We can help you discover the price, access the price. We have guaranteed liquidity. We'll provide price guarantees for 7 minutes. We have full wallet services over our API that are free. If you want to start a wallet in the Middle East or somewhere, we can help you with the technology. merchant services, basically all the basic infrastructure that you need to hook up a local economy, we've built out. What we haven't done is gone into all these local economies and marketed it to them, localized it, translated it into languages and so on. We really think that this is best handled through partnerships. We don't want to get licensed in 200 different countries around the world. It would be just a massive headache. Maybe over the next 10 years, that can be a goal for us. But today, the fastest way to get Bitcoin out is for us all to work together. All these local initiatives are wonderful. That's the best way to really reach people. But you need tools. And for any of you out there, we can help. That's it. Does anyone have questions? Yep.
That's a great talk, Ira. So my first question is do you think Satoshi could have been referencing that picture as well?
Maybe, yeah.
And if so, because people talk about how Bitcoin might be able to eliminate wars, do you think that's possible?
Well, I think this is tied to a libertarian idea, which is essentially that governments are force, governments exercise violence. That's their core role in society. And the people that think that Bitcoin can end war, basically their hope is that Bitcoin cuts taxation abilities. If you can't control people's money, then you can't force them to pay taxes. And also, the second major funding for government activities is inflation. A lot of people don't really understand how this happens, but basically they just print money and spend it. They turn on the printing presses and use it to buy tanks and guns and things like that.
The second question is regarding partnerships. Are you guys releasing an API for locks so that companies like ours can work with you?
Yeah, we have a full API for locks. We also, for KYC companies, do conversions. So, the same spread that you see with locks, you can have that settled to your bank in 40 or 50 different countries. So, yep.
I'd be interested to hear about the traction so far on the SMS side, where you're seeing that adoption really tick up. Sure.
That's a great question. So the SMS wallet we first launched in 2012. At the time, we were running it out of the US. We were running the whole company out of the US. And it was really a proof of concept and kind of an initial delivery mechanism. So if you were buying Bitcoins for the first time, for instance, through BitInstant or a company like that, by hooking into our API, they could allow the purchaser to receive the Bitcoins without first having to set up a wallet and go through the kind of initial learning curve. That's also kind of how our email system came into play. We recently relaunched the SMS system. Basically, the US was a bad demographic fit. Most people in the US have smartphones. Most people in the US have bank accounts. Most people in the US have credit cards. Where it was kind of a proof of concept, the initial SMS wallet. 2 weeks ago, roughly, we relaunched our SMS wallet as an international service. At first, we are running only a single node out of Canada for the communication. So it's not a really ideal solution right now. People have to pay, unless you're in Canada, international texting fees. And clearly, Canada is also not our target market for this service. But our main goal for the SMS wallet throughout the year is to onboard new gateways. And we've set a specific target of 50 countries by the end of 2015.
Can you explain that concept a little bit about technically the SMS wallet would work? Sure.
I had a demonstration that I was going to show, so if you want, I can show you more specifically after. But simply, there's a number that Coinapult operates that's connected to our servers on the back end, and you send commands to it or requests. So you would say, send, if you know Eric's phone number, email address, send Eric at Coinapult 1 Bitcoin. We would receive your request, send you back a code to ensure that you are who you are, or at least that your phone is your phone. And then if you respond correctly, we'll transmit the Bitcoin.
what would be the use case, say, for like somebody who is unbanked and is trying to pay for their groceries and shit?
So the end goal with these services is to make Bitcoin pretty seamlessly useful, like mobile money is in, for instance, Kenya today. It clearly requires a lot of infrastructure. You know, both parties have to be on board. But a common use case that we talk about is for remittances. So, for example, somebody in the US might purchase some Bitcoin through Circle or something, one of those companies, and with the desire to send the Bitcoins to you know, a family member in Latin America, let's say Argentina, rural Argentina, because in Buenos Aires everyone's got smartphones as well. But in rural Argentina, you know, they don't have local bank branches everywhere, things like that. But using our SMS wallet, the sender could log into Coinapult, you know, type in the phone number, send the Bitcoin. It would show up in an SMS message a few minutes later. The person on the other side, the recipient, could lock the Bitcoins from the SMS interface to keep the value stable. And then when they have time or it's convenient for them, they can arrange to sell the Bitcoins for local currencies. That last step, the selling the Bitcoins for local currencies, is definitely the toughest one. And that's one of the reasons why we want to build out a local partner network to really facilitate the full circle of remittances.
Yeah. Do you think of decentralization of your SMS gateway? Like give people ability to work as a gateway for you?
That's actually our main goal for the gateway. We're currently approaching mobile money operators around the Caribbean and other places. Basically, it's a loss leader for us. I'll put it that way. You know, all these SMS messages are quite expensive. We pay the SMS messaging fees. We also pay Bitcoin network fees for our users. We think that this is important for access. Again, you know, these fees are so small. We don't want to really nickel and dime our users. And we can monetize them by when they use locks. We have a tight spread, but that's how we make revenue. But I think that existing mobile money operators have a lot of good experience and most specifically relationships with the local community, with the local regulators. And whenever possible, we want to piggyback off their systems and help them integrate Bitcoin rather than trying to run it ourselves and start from scratch.
Thank you. That was very informative. Regarding, you said there were three things, including the SMS and whatnot. And the first one was the lock.
Yeah. There are three things that Coinapult is doing to increase access.
Yeah. And for the lock system, I mean, obviously it's a lot of risk on your part because or no?
It's not a lot of risk on our part. We are fully hedged within seconds of the transaction happening. So a typical lock transaction will be initiated by someone saying, I would like to lock some Bitcoins. We quote them a price that's guaranteed for 7 minutes. Within that window, they either just approve it from within their Coinapult account or actually send the money from an external wallet. As soon as we receive the payment, we make a counter trade to basically back the lock. All of our locks are 100% backed. You know, so if you lock $100, we're selling $100 worth of Bitcoins and buying $100.
You need to find someone that's willing to do the other transactions.
Yes, and that's why we do all the market making, price discovery.
And so you need a lot of volume.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you have that volume now.
We do, yeah. And it's never enough. You know, we want to connect to anybody in the space who's providing liquidity, who will help us clear coins as they come in, or vice versa, acquire coins when people unlock. Our goal is really just to get as much liquidity available on our book as possible to reduce these risks.
Okay, and your plan with the API is to have a lot of people do this stuff, and then obviously can do many more, you can peg the Bitcoin storage with many more currencies, and it's more stable.
Yeah, we can add additional currencies very, very easily. We thought that these 5 were a really good starting point because they're the major reserve currencies of the world. The dollar is clearly the reserve currency of the world. Second is definitely the euro. The pound, I think, is arguably third. Bitcoin's also just quite popular in Britain. Gold and silver are real money. So I think that everybody kind of recognizes the value and staying power of them. As far as our API and how we plan to grow using that, again, we're not really tied to running these services ourselves. We're very happy to sit in the background and help other people provide services either locally or, in this case, other wallets that operate globally can integrate locks as plugins to add value to their users and monetize their users, because we do pay a commission for partners locking. Any other questions? Thank you for having me.